sideways
if you are a
around
muscle car
corners,
lover, jumping over broken bridges,
have to watch
and
this
evading
entire
Sheriff
video.
Buford T.
This is the pride
Justice
of you,
for hundreds
the
of
pride
miles,
of muscle cars,
a burning
the
desire
pride of America,
was ignited, and the
Suddenly,
pride of cinema.
every driver
Filmmakers
wanted a
have turned
TA
muscle
in their
cars
garage.
into real actors.
The market response
Has that
was
contributed
explosive.
to making these
Sales
cars famous? Watch this video with us and find out. If you enjoyed this video, please comment with the number 2, and we will continue producing part 2 of this content. When director Hal Needham selected a 1977 Pontiac Trans Am to star alongside Burt Reynolds and Sally Field in the movie Smokey and the Bandit, he could never have predicted the massive cultural impact that machine would have on the United States. Although the Pontiac Trans Am had maintained a similar aesthetic for more than half a decade before the film debuted, the audience's perception changed instantly. As soon as moviegoers witnessed that black and gold Pontiac Trans Am sliding sideways around corners, jumping over broken bridges, and evading Sheriff Buford T. Justice for hundreds of miles, a burning desire was ignited. Suddenly, every driver wanted a TA in their garage. The market response was explosive. Sales figures surged by approximately 30,000 cars from 1977 to 1978, followed by another increase of 24,000 units for 1979. Americans went absolutely crazy for the Starlight Black Special Edition paint job and the open-air T-top roof. Furthermore, they realized this car was actually quicker and offered better handling than the Chevy Corvette of the same generation. It was likely a perfect combination of these performance factors, plus a massive amount of Burt Reynolds' star appeal, that solidified the Pontiac Trans Am as a true legend. A few years before the phenomenon of Star Wars, George Lucas filmed American Graffiti, a reflection of his memories regarding the car culture in California during the 1960s. Beyond a cast that included future megastars such as Ron Howard, Harrison Ford, and Richard Dreyfuss, the movie featured some great hot rods. However, only one became the most recognized deuce coupe in the world. This brash canary yellow 1932 Ford Highboy is powered by a Chevy 327 cubic inch V8 engine, and it sits a little tall in the rear for a seriously cool rake. The climatic drag race on Paradise Road pits John Milner in the 1932 Ford against an equally tough-looking 1955 Chevy driven by Bob Falfa. The 1932 Ford smokes the 1955 Chevy off the line. Halfway down the road, the Chevy flies off the track, flips, and blows up. It is an amazing special effects scene, but in reality, that same 1955 Chevy would appear painted flat gray in another car movie classic, two-lane blacktop. Visually, John DeLorean's 1981 DeLorean DMC-12 was a stainless steel stunner designed by the legendary Giorgetto Giugiaro. Under the hood, though, the DeLorean was not quite the supercar that its flashy bodywork promised. It carried a pokey 2.9-liter V6 engine making just 130 horsepower. But that simply did not matter. Its futuristic looks, combined with a bit of movie magic, gave the DeLorean legendary status. Because it served as a time machine in the film, the real-life specifications were irrelevant, with one specific exception. Reportedly, the prop staff replaced that sluggish V6 with a V8 from the Porsche 928. This power upgrade went a long way toward helping Marty McFly hit 88 miles per hour, fire up the flux capacitor, and shoot back to 1955. Despite its massive movie celebrity, the DeLorean flopped on the market in the 1980s, but the unique, retro-futurist design of the car has earned it a cult following today. There is even a new DeLorean Motor Company currently restoring and improving the cars. Any vehicle driven, ridden, or even stood next to by Steve McQueen was instantly made cooler. However, the Highland Green 1968 Ford Mustang GT390 did not need much help. The chase scenes in the movie on the streets of San Francisco, tailing a 1968 Dodge Charger, are some of the best ever recorded on film. The stripped-down look of the movie Mustangs made them appear subtly meaner than regular production models. The original magnesium American Racing torque thrust wheels give McQueen's car its aggressive stance. You know a car has transcended its cult movie status and become an icon when a car company makes a limited edition version twice, as Ford has done with the Bullitt Mustang. The 1970 Dodge Challenger RT, especially the Hemi model, was one of the most impressive pony cars to emerge from the muscle boom of the late 1960s and early 1970s. Its reputation was solidified by the film Vanishing Point, although the RT models used in the film were actually 440 powered. The plot is simple. Kowalski bets that he can drive from Denver to San Francisco in less than 15 hours. To achieve this, he would require an average speed of over 80 miles per hour. As you can imagine, there are plenty of great stunts. Executed by the same team that worked on Bullitt, Kowalski dusts off a Jaguar XKE, launches the Dodge Challenger over a gully, and performs all kinds of other crazy driving. However, there is one glaring error. In the final crash that destroys the car, the filmmakers used a 1967 Camaro rather than a Dodge Challenger. When it comes to the subject of cars, Australians are historically just as power-hungry as Americans. Consequently, during the 1960s and 1970s, the Australian arms of American car companies created some fairly brutal muscle machines, specifically cars that we never saw in the United States. One of those unique vehicles was the Ford Falcon. In its third generation, the Ford Falcon XB GT got its power from a 351 cubic inch V8 engine. However, for the movie Mad Max, the filmmakers transformed the already cool Falcon into the machine known as the Pursuit Special or Interceptor. To achieve this, the crew plastered a new nose on the front end, emblazoned the body with huge flares, and tucked seriously fat tires underneath them. The true centerpiece was located under the hood, or, more precisely, sticking out of it. In the movie, the switch-activated supercharger boosts the power of the Interceptor anytime Max needed to skedaddle. But, alas, it was only a movie, and that impressive supercharger was ultimately a fake. The classic 1968 to 1970 Dodge Charger is a genuine television and movie superstar. The most famous of all was undoubtedly the 1969 Dodge Charger, known as the General Lee from the Dukes of Hazzard television show. Another Dodge Charger starred in the 1970s cult hit Dirty Mary Crazy Larry. However, in the year 2000, the venerable Dodge Charger took to the screen again. This time, it was built as a menacing black street racing machine for Vin Diesel, with a wicked stance, giant rear tires, and a humongous engine and supercharger sticking out of the hood. This Dodge Charger was insanely cool. It was the climactic action scene of the movie that made this car so memorable. As Vin Diesel's character lines up against Paul Walker's character, who is driving a Supra, he floors the throttle. The Dodge Charger performs a sick wheel stand and a burnout at the same time. It is movie magic for sure, but still fun to watch. Later in that same race, the two cars jump a set of train tracks just as a locomotive passes, and a heartbeat later, Diesel flips the Dodge Charger in a spectacular finish to the chase scene. Are you getting déjà vu? The 1970 Dodge Charger and the car-heavy Furious saga make the list again, and for good reason. For the seventh film, movie makers reimagined Dom Toretto's black Dodge Charger into something even wilder than his original wheel-standing car. Dennis McCarthy, the vehicle's builder, is an avid off-road race fan. Consequently, this particular Dodge Charger is basically a full Baja race truck in disguise. The suspension features a long-travel, high-clearance design that allows for massive off-road tires on bead-locked rims. To cover these larger wheels, the fenders have been expertly flared, making the beast look incredibly imposing and capable. Perhaps the most memorable scene in the movie involves Toretto launching the Dodge Charger from the back of a transport plane at 30,000 feet and skydiving to the ground. The Dodge Charger floats down to the road below, and the suspension soaks up the landing after the chute detaches. Yes, it is all very far-fetched. However, there is a shred of believability here, simply because that Dodge Charger is so well set up. Keanu Reeves's most memorable on-screen vehicle just may be a Los Angeles city bus, but his coolest is undoubtedly the 1969 Ford Mustang featured in the movie he made 20 years later, John Wick. The Ford Mustang in question is identified in the movie as possibly being a Ford Mustang Boss 429. However, that is simply not the case. A real Boss 429 is rare and highly collectible. In fact, one sold at auction back in 2015 for $550,000. It is likely the film crew used a 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1 with either a 390 cubic inch V8 or a 428. Both are plenty potent for on-screen antics and look absolutely badass. The cool thing about this movie is that it is clear this is a real car, doing the driving without any computer graphic effects. It is also reported that Reeves did most of the stunt driving himself after going through a performance driving school. One of the best scenes is watching him fishtail the Ford Mustang around a wet airport parking lot, sliding it closer and closer to a row of dump trucks. The Ford Mustang reappears in John Wick Chapter 2. The Bluesmobile may not be the Batmobile, but this decommissioned Mount Prospect, Illinois, police cruiser is just as recognizable as the outfits of Jake and Elwood Blues. Born from Saturday Night Live veterans Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, the sketch resulted in 2 movies. The 1974 Dodge Monaco version was only used in the first film. The sequel saw a 1990 Ford LTD Crown Victoria as the latest incarnation of the Bluesmobile. The film utilized 13 different cars as the Bluesmobile, all of which were former California Highway Department patrol cars made up to look like Mount Prospect cruisers. Some cars were modified for speed, others for jumps or high-performance maneuvers. More than 60 old police cars were purchased for the many chase scenes, resulting in a 24-hour body shop on set to perform repairs. A world record 103 cars were wrecked during filming. Legendary custom car designer Dean Jeffries worked on the first movie, stating in Motor Trend that they must have smashed a couple hundred cars. The number of wrecks for Blues Brothers: 2,104. There is no better person to surpass you than yourself. How could we possibly leave a horror movie centered around a 1958 Plymouth Fury off the list? Stephen King was so popular at the time that the film went into production before the book was even published. Anywhere between 23 and 28 cars were used in the film, and not all of them were Furies. Columbia Pictures placed ads across the country, looking to buy Belvederes and Savoys too. The majority of the cars were used on screen, and the rest were utilized for spare parts. The illusion of the ability of Christine to regenerate herself was created using hydraulic pumps located inside the car that were attached to the sides of a plastic-paneled body double. The pumps sucked in the sides to create a damaged version, and then the film was reversed. That represents some tricky special effects for 1983. Another deceiving trick? The sound we hear from the engine is not actually a Plymouth Fury. Filmmakers used a recording of a 1970 Ford Mustang 428 Super Cobra jet engine. Ah, the Mirthmobile. The perfect get-around for a flame-throwing, head-banging, licorice-loving guy or gal. While Wayne's World resurrected the 1976 AMC Pacer and Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, it is widely considered to be one of the ugliest cars ever made. Intending to break ground in the compact car category at the time, its main selling point was its unusual width. It was as wide as a mid-size car. It is typical for movies to have multiple versions of the same car, but it is believed that only one AMC Pacer was used for the cast trips to Stan Mikita's Donuts. This Pacer has the larger 4.2-liter inline-six motor mated to a 3-speed automatic transmission. The hatchback was modified for the film inside and out, including a hole in the roof, allowing for the installation of the red rope licorice dispenser. It is simply not the 1980s without a proper movie montage. And honestly, what better fodder is there than the process of restoring a vintage Chevy Camaro with John Cusack? The film Better Off Dead remains an underrated classic. It serves as a quintessential coming-of-age story for the character Lane Meyer. He is a guy who just wants to get the girl and kick some jock booty. The vehicle began as an impulse purchase simply because Lane thought it looked tasty, and it quickly became a massive eyesore sitting on his family's front lawn. Eventually, however, he gets around to restoring the 1967 Chevy Camaro SS with the necessary help from a French foreign exchange student. Love blooms, as well as his street cred, thanks to the presence of this classic muscle car. It is interesting to note that the car still makes appearances at car shows across the United States today. This is possible only because a zealous fan successfully tracked down the specific screen-used model that was actually utilized during the production of the film. Grab yourself a White Russian and enjoy this 1973 Ford Grand Torino. It may look like a beater, but it was an underrated star of the Big Lebowski and an extension of the dude's being. Originally, his ride was supposed to be a Chrysler LeBaron. However, that car was not large enough to accommodate Mr. Walter Sobchak himself, John Goodman. Consequently, a switch was made to the Ford Grand Torino, which was a redesign of the 1972 model featuring a longer, over-exaggerated front nose. There were 2 Ford Grand Torinos used in the filming. One was destroyed in the movie, while the other made a splash on a Season 8 episode of The X-Files, where, Unfortunately, it was also destroyed. Movie magic and a limited budget are the true culprits behind this Ferrari imposter. This vehicle is actually a replica built to resemble a 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California, which cost around $300,000 at the time. It is an amalgam of parts, including a steel tube subframe, a Ford-sourced small-block V8 engine, and Ferrari-inspired fiberglass bodywork and emblems. As Cameron states, "My father spent 3 years restoring this car. It is his life. It is his passion." Ferris retorts, "It is his fault. He did not lock the garage." You can rest easy, knowing that a real Ferrari was not killed in that infamous garage scene. Instead of a Ferrari, you have a 1985 Modena GT Spider California. 3 replicas were made for filming. One was used for most of the movie, while a second was used for stunts, ultimately becoming the car that rolls backward out of the glass garage. A third was used for other shots. 2 of them went up for auction through Meckham in this century. One sold in 2013 for $235,000, and a second sold in 2020 for a whopping $407,000. The battle between Callahan Auto and Zielinski Auto Parts was well fought by Chris Farley and David Spade, much to the chagrin of Bo Derek and Rob Lowe. In the film, Tommy asks Richard about his 1967 Plymouth Belvedere GTX. Richard claims that he dropped in a 440 Magnum with a 6-pack, stating that, "You must hang on to a car this cherry." He should have known that it would slightly diminish in resale value after letting Farley in. We see this car through 2 distinct eras, pre-Deere and post-Deere. The door on the driver's side falls off, the hood flies off, and the windshield gains a hole. When the hood departs after Tommy leaves an oil can inside, the visual evidence contradicts the dialogue. You can clearly see that the engine has an air cleaner for a single 4-barrel 440 Commando. Like any classic outlaw, these 2 ladies rode in style in a 1966 Ford T-Bird. The car was chosen simply for its practicality for shooting movies. It is open and easy to shoot the actors, and the back seat allows for Thelma and Louise to travel with other characters. A total of 5 cars were used in the movie. 1 hero car used solely for exterior shots, 1 camera car, 2 stunt cars, and 1 for backup. They did not receive any customization that is customary for a movie car. Instead, they remained the same as they would have been straight off the showroom floor. Since being purchased from Metro MGM Movies in 1991, 1 car was sold at auction in 2008. It earned $71,500, but that price could have been for the Brad Pitt and Gina Davis signatures adorning the armrest and sun visor, respectively. For the movie RoboCop, the basic body of the 6000 SUX was actually a 1977 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. This vehicle was chosen specifically for its 4-door layout and futuristic look. 2 complete, fully operational SUX cars were built using parts from a third one that production people blew up in Dallas. The actual auto bodies were made from fiberglass components, but the engine and interior were left unchanged from the original Oldsmobile. The wing mirrors were made specially for the car. You can check them out for yourself in the commercial. A little history lesson is required to explain the choice of the name 6000 SUX, because it was not just a random number. Director Paul Verhoeven spotted a Ford Taurus pass by the set one day and decided it should be the car used in the film by the police and RoboCop. However, Ford was not interested in any way whatsoever to be involved with the picture, and declined to provide them with any cars to use in return for free publicity. Production had to purchase all cars used in the film, but they were able to take a swipe at one of the main competitors of the Taurus at the time, the Pontiac 6000, by naming the car the 6000 SUX. Aside from the soothing soundtrack of Simon and Garfunkel, this film is primarily remembered for 2 things. First, there is the iconic line, "Mrs. Robinson, you are trying to seduce me." Second, there is the red 1966 Alfa Romeo 1600 Duetto Spider that character Benjamin Braddock drives. This specific car was manufactured from 1966 until 1994. At that time, all production finally ceased, and Alfa Romeo officially pulled out of the North American market in 1995. Kurt Russell is an all-American man, so naturally, he drives an all-American car in the movie Death Proof. The vehicle of choice is a 1971 Chevy Nova SS. The story follows a stuntman who likes to take unsuspecting women for rides in his free time. He He has doctored his car to be death-proof, but crucially, it is safe only for himself. The driver's seat is a proper racing seat with padding and a reinforced roof panel, while the passenger seat is merely a tractor seat with plexiglass surrounding it. There were 4 cars built for the movie. The only fully caged one that ran well enough to perform the driving scenes was appropriately named the Jesus. As an Easter egg, the rubber duck hood ornament is courtesy of Chris Christopherson in the film Convoy. The other caged car, called the Prius, was destroyed during filming. This left the Jesus up for grabs. Ultimately, it wound up in the hands of the true stunt driver's high school son for a cool $500.